Hello, hello, and I hope everyone had a beautiful and blessed solstice. I really enjoyed all the fresh energy, the longer days. I'm not generally a summer kind of gal, but I have to admit, I do appreciate all of the seasons. I love autumn and winter as much as the next witch, but absence really does make the heart grow fonder. I can appreciate the backyard barbecues and the farmers markets and the fireworks shows, while I pine longingly for cloudy days and cold nights, and I'm just enjoying it. And we are going to dive into the topic of the day in a moment, but first I wanted to read an email. Good morning, Eli. I have been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I love how comforted it makes me feel and the amount of knowledge I'm gaining from it. I'm new to this, and I relate to those who say that witchcraft never ever crossed their minds, but after learning more about it, it is something that was always naturally there. I could ask you a million questions based on my beliefs, where I am at with them, and how to forge my own path without disregarding certain things I still hold dear. But I'm feeling the desire to navigate this on my own as best I can, and I respect that. There is one thing that concerns me, though, and I do need the advice of someone more advanced than me. I am truly worried to ask the wrong person because this is very real and serious to me. I feel drawn to witchcraft. It feels natural to me, but when I listen to you and read about it, and it fits so easily into who I am and what I love. But I feel frozen when it comes to actually practicing. I have seen dark figures, mostly during my childhood, but I have felt others as an adult. When my oldest son was a toddler, he saw things too. My mother saw one of the exact same figures that I did when she was a child, and the story behind how we found out is a crazy and long one. At least one of my brothers seems to be sensitive to certain things, but we've never spoken in depth about what he's experienced. I do know that what my mother and I have seen is not specific to a place and can appear seemingly anywhere. I don't know what these things are, but because I've seen them and my belief in supernatural beings is so solidified because of it, I go to bed at night terrified sometimes that I'm drawing their attention back to me. I worry that practicing witchcraft will annoy them or intrigue them or whatever the case may be. I don't even know what my specific question is, but I do know that I want to practice, and any advice on how to make myself more comfortable and safe would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for what you're doing and reaching out to people like me. So this witch's family is clearly very sensitive to spirit activity, and this is a very good thing. But I did advise her that she needs to exert control over it so that she doesn't feel vulnerable. And this goes for any of us when it comes to spirit activity around us. You are the witch. You hold the control. You get to decide who comes into your space. Nobody else. I suspect that the only reason this witch is so fearful is because she hasn't tried to interact with these entities to discover what they're all about. They are not stronger than you, and they can't harm you. It may startle you if they show up unexpectedly, but again, they can't harm you. They just can't. So stop giving them the energy of your fear. You can communicate with them on your terms. Find out who they are, what they want, how you can help them if you even want to help them, which again is your decision to make. Now, I've done episodes on protection magic and creating amulets to seal up your personal space so that spirits and entities can't just come and go as they please. And this is where we need to begin with this kind of work. And I will link to all of those episodes in the show notes. But first things first, set up some strong defenses. around your home, around your living space, around your bedroom especially, since they seem to have your undivided attention at night when everything else is really quiet. And also around yourself. That's where the amulet comes in. But there's no point in not practicing your craft because you're afraid to get their attention. Like, that ship has sailed. They've already noticed you. You already have their attention. They know you are aware of them, so you may as well set boundaries with them and proceed with your own witchcraft practice. When all else fails, all you have to do to get rid of unwanted entities is put some power in your voice, loudly and directly command them to leave your presence immediately. And then once you're comfortable with this kind of defensive work and you feel confident about your ability to command your own personal space, you can begin to try and communicate with them. But again, only if you want to, only on your terms. Cast a protective spell before you begin this kind of communication, and remember that when you're done, to dismiss all of the entities that are there, send them away. But I feel like this could help remove the fear and hesitation that you feel around your abilities in general. And this is one of the many, many emails that I've gotten from witches who are just so afraid of their own abilities and of their own potential. And that is something I simply cannot abide. If there is one thing you should never, ever fear, it's yourself. If you're concerned about unintentionally setting something into motion, then a great way to avoid that is to intentionally set something into motion. Intention, intention, intention. Say what you mean and mean what you say, but don't hide your light because you're worried that someone will see it. We have a responsibility to shine. So, I'm going to get off my soapbox. Thank you again to that witch for reaching out. And if you'd like to write to me, please do so at eli@middleagedwitch.com. You can also find written transcripts of this and every episode of the podcast on middleagedwitch.com. And you can find me on social at middleagedwitch. Now today, I wanted to talk about needlecraft and using it in our practices. And this was suggested by a witch called Brielle. So I had to look at my note real fast. And we've touched a little bit on this before. We've spoken about it briefly. I know in the Spell Jar and Mojo Bags episode, we talked about how making mojo bags ourselves, actually sewing them, can add a whole lot of energy and power into the work itself. Regardless of the purpose of the actual mojo bag, the very act of creating the vessel that we're going to use in our work is incredibly powerful. And for that matter, it's the same when we're sewing our own poppets. It does not matter one little bit how wonky it looks or how uneven the stitches are. The process itself of creating the poppet and stitching it together imbues the work with a lot of extra zest. But there's more to it than just throwing a quick mojo bag together, with some old scrap material and the world's wobbliest whip stitch. Needlework, embroidery, cross-stitch, crocheting, knitting, all of that is a great way to get the most out of our spell work. We have the opportunity to use color magic when we choose the materials and the threads that we use. So, if I plan to do a spell for attracting money, you better believe that I'm going to try and use fabrics and or threads in colors that will support that. So, green or gold. If I'm stitching up a protection rune, I might use purple. If I'm setting a hex, I'm going to use black. If it's for money, it'll be green. If it's for love, it'll be red. For friendship, it'll be pink, and so on and so on. And we can stitch all kinds of things beyond simple runes. We can stitch sigils, of course, and names and numbers and power phrases. We can stitch these shapes and words into our mojo bags, but also into our clothing for protection, or our child's school bags for focus, or our wallet to attract money. But let us not forget another exciting aspect of Needlecraft Magick, which is symbolism. Beyond sigils and runes, we can look around ourselves for all kinds of powerful symbolism that we can stitch into our work. Dollar signs, hearts, zodiac symbols, spirals, triangles, pentagrams, the Ankh. All of these symbols, when recreated by our own hands and charged with our own specific intentions, can become spells in and of themselves. And knot magic is also something that we can incorporate into our woven crafts, whether we're knitting, crocheting, sewing, embroidery, what have you. We have the ability to weave knots into those designs in some form or fashion. And my personal favorite method of setting a spell with knots is to speak the spell or my intention right as I pull the knot tight. In this way, my words themselves are woven into the fabric of the garment or the mojo bag or whatever the case may be. And incidentally, since we are on the subject of speaking words into knots, I have to say this is a really great way to get a personal concern of someone to use in a spell. Like if you don't have a person's, hair or like toenail clippings or whatever that you want to use in a spell, you can tie a knot while they're speaking and use that knot in your spell work to connect the spell to that specific person. Is it ethical? I don't know. It's a bit of a sneaky way to get a personal concern from somebody, but your business is your business. Hex responsibly. But just casually tie a length of thread or yarn or twine or whatever during a conversation, and then just yank it tight while that person is speaking. And now you've got their voice to use in your spell, tied into that knot in lieu of a hair sample or a handwriting sample or something. This kind of creation in witchcraft is so potent. And this is why it's so special to have a quilt that your great-grandmother made, or, a doily or a handmade dress, because it's so much more than the item itself. The creative process has empowered this mundane object with love and comfort and protection. And we can do the same with our magic. And, one final thought that I have to impart before we close today is this. I know we've all heard of the creative process, and usually we think of the creative process as the means to an end. The purpose of the creative process is to create something, a poem, a painting, a quilt, a story, a photograph, a song, a recipe. We seldom appreciate the creative process as its own reward. But when we get into that zone, that creative mind space, it's not only a means to an end, it becomes meditative. We get in touch with our higher self, and we are able to access that place where all of our big ideas and our flashes of inspiration and our moments of clarity come from. And you can bet your sweet ass that occupying that space is going to influence the magic that you're able to perform. This is the zone. This is the sweet spot. So when we find ourselves with an opportunity to create the vessels that we use in our magic, like mojo bags, or to enrich the work with embroidered embellishments, or to tie our spells into place with knot magic, we should take it. Not only to make the end result that much more powerful, which it will, but also to give ourselves an opportunity to inhabit that creative space and to participate in the creative process. Any time that we can spend in the presence of our own creative muse is time well spent. We owe it to ourselves, not only as witches, but as human beings who are here on this planet to create and to change and to evolve. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you very much for joining me today. Have a fantastic day and a lovely weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week. My name is Eli Rowe, and this has been the Middle-Aged Witch Podcast.